Good afternoon, colleagues. This is Merale Puma from Lenyorala Tuto Comprehensive School in Botshabelo. Today I'll be dealing with the source-based task, the marking guideline for the grade 11s. This is the source-based task that we're going to look at. Remember, colleagues, that we are supposed to give learners to go home and then research on their task. I hope that instruction was done perfectly. When we look at the question paper, it says here, the task must be completed under the supervision of the teacher during class time. Learners are allowed to use textbooks and other resources to complete the task. It means each and every learner would have made the research and task the first source, which is question 1. Colleagues, when you look at question 1, the question says identify the 3 types of relationship illustrated in the cartoon above. So learners were supposed to look at this cartoon and then analyze the cartoon and then answer the first question. I did a bit of analyzing the cartoon. I looked at the first picture. I see that the gentleman is dominant in their relationship. I did this just to analyze, just to show our learners how to analyze a question. Now this is the cartoon. We have to analyze it because the questions that follows are from the cartoon. When we look at the second one, these are bees. Now this is a flower. It means we see that everything here, it's healthy or things are okay. Or rather would say the lady is not complaining a lot. But when we go to the third picture, we'd see that a Coke and a Mentos, now problems comes. Immediately we put this Mentos into a Coke, something else happens. This is how we analyze the cartoon. Now, the first question says, you identify from the cartoon 3 relationships. When we look at the first relationship, it's an abusive relationship. Why are we saying that? Because the ex will chop the wood. That's why it's abusive. The second one, remember, we've said that it is bees and flowers. They dominate together. It means the relationship is healthy. The third one, it's a conflict relationship. When we say a conflict relationship, it means that we see that now the problem arises between the Mentos and the Coke. Remember, the Coke also has its problem. Mentos has its own problems also. But now, together, they make a certain conflict in a relationship. Hence, they said there are all kinds of relationship. So, the answers, and some learners will elaborate, but pick the ones that are right, because sometimes they'll be writing something that is very long. Please, colleagues, it's 1 mark per relationship that the learner has outlined. The second question, colleagues, it says, relationships have impact on our daily lives. Discuss the social and cultural views that influences and affect our relationship. Now, we need to teach our learners on how to analyze their questions. Discuss social and cultural views. It means our answers will be based on social and cultural views. Now, let us look at the first 2 answers, then the last 2 answers. The first 2 answers are based on society. Hence, we need to mark learners looking at the society or the social views. The second answers will look at the gender roles. The first one says, we live in a society with different cultural views. These views may influence and affect us. The question says, discuss the influence that these social and cultural views, how will they affect the relationships? Now, colleagues, the first one, remember, when we look at the mark allocation, we answer according to the mark allocations provided. We live in societies with different cultural views. These views affect us a lot. We need to consider, now we are in the society, immediately we say we need to consider and respect all cultural views within the society that we live in. If a learner has shown that in the answers that their answer is related to the impact of these in our relationship, then you give that learner a mark. And remember, colleagues, we do not make, for example, a double tick. You need to mark where it is necessary. You have to obey societal and cultural norms. It means now, this affects the relationship. If we obey the societal and cultural norms, that is the influence that it will have in the relationship. It means if you don't obey the societal and cultural norms, it will affect also the relationship, which may sometimes conflict with your own convictions, beliefs, or freedom of choice. Now, colleagues, let us look at it this way. The social and cultural views. There are social views, there are cultural views, but together combined, they affect the relationship. Hence, here it is very clear that the cultural norms, sometimes that will conflict on us because we need to obey them. That also cause and affect the relationship. For example, what are the societal and cultural norms that we have? Sometimes the norms that we'll be having is that we need to, for example, women have to respect men, and men are mostly dominant in the relationship. So because of that norm, that will affect women a lot, and also the freedom of choice. The third one, gender roles have changed in the 21st century, but society and its cultural views still expect the youth to follow them, which becomes an issue. It is very much true. This tends to have a negative impact on the relationship between youth and elders. Now, youth are used to their modern way of living, but the elders are used to their old ways of living. Now, because of that, now it affects the relationship between older people and the young generation, of which it's not something that happens because they want to, but because the society now, it's like that. What this question basically say, it also refers back to the stereotypical views that we have on gender that we did in grade 10. Okay, 1.3 says, advice to the women in each of the cartoons on how to get out of an unhealthy relationship. Let us look at, before we go to the answer, let us go and check the cartoon first. This is the cartoon. Now, the first relationship, we see that the male or the man is dominant. Whatever that the male is saying goes. The second relationship might be the lady decides, I'm not going to say anything, or rather the guy also is very much aware of what the lady is like. That is why there is this harmonious relationship that we see. The third one, it's now the coke and the Mentos. Now we need to advise the three ladies on this relationship they are having, on how to get out of this relationship. Let us look at the first image. What are we saying to the lady about the first image? What we are saying to the lady about the first image is that, because we need to help the lady. And remember, colleagues, we mark accordingly. In the first image, the woman needs to leave her husband and report his abuse to the police before he hurts her badly. She needs to get counseling so she can get healthy perspective of what a relationship should be like. This is very much true, colleagues. Remember, we did the unhealthy relationships in class. Now, when you advise, learners might be having different answers from this one, but check the relevancy of the answers to the ones that are on the marking guidelines. Now, we see that the first woman is holding the hand of the husband or the guy. Now, because of that, we would say to the woman, it's very much important for you to report what the husband is doing to you. Remember, this is very, very dangerous. This is a very dangerous weapon. This is an X. So this is an X. Now this is wood. So it means whatever that the men say goes. Now, after analyzing that, we see that the woman has to report that to the police before anything bad could happen. Remember, colleagues, the first tick and the second tick. Or the answer could be she needs to get counseling. When she's going to have counseling, she's going to see things differently on how he should be treated or she should be treated. Sorry. The second relationship is healthy. The woman should be encouraged to communicate with her husband if she feels frustrated and work out the differences. Now, when we say they need to work out the differences, remember, colleagues, the 1 mark, if we say in this relationship is healthy, the 1 mark will be for the advice that you are giving the lady and the supporting fact or how you motivate the advice that you've given the lady. Now we are saying if the lady is going to communicate with her husband if she feels frustrated, that will help the lady to know or the guy to know the differences they have so that they work out on their differences. The third one, the last relationship would need counseling also so that both male and female can learn to communicate without hating each other. You would see that you know how strong are the mentors. You know how strong they are. Now, the coke is also strong in itself. So if the mentors goes to the coke, it becomes a conflict. And remember, we need to advise the lady. Now, what advice are we having to the lady? The lady should do what? Should get counseling. Or both of them, they could get counseling on how they can communicate with each other without hurting each other. I hope this is very much clear, colleagues. Now, we are going to the fourth question. What does the fourth question say? Analyze how each of the following factors could be regarded as positive to any relationship and your well-being. Choices and goal setting. Choices and goal setting. Now, I want us to look at the mark allocation. The mark allocation is 1 multiplied by 3, which is going to be 3. Now, when we look at this, it means for the choices, we need 3 responses. Us having 3 responses will qualify us to get 3 marks. For goal setting also, will be given 3 marks if we have 3 responses. Remember, consider a learner's opinion in this answer and credit answers where learners justify their response. Now, it means that learners, the answers might be different from their marking guideline. But when we look at the learners' responses, what we normally do, when we mark the learners' responses, we say, this is the first, we would go to the learners' responses and then highlight. It is the same as an answer number 1.1, 1.4.1. Now, each relationship represented above, remember we're talking only about choices. Each relationship represented above indicates the choice by each person in that relationship. Remember, they are staying in that relationship because they made a choice to stay in that relationship. So this relationship, I am being in this relationship, that is a choice that a woman or the guy is having. When we end up in a relationship that makes us uncomfortable, we have the right to choose. We have the right to the choices to leave that relationship. Our freedom to choose will influence our well-being. If I would just like to make an example here to the learners. If now we're talking about the choices. If you don't choose to go out of the relationship, it means that will affect your well-being. Hence, the question says, analyze how each of the following factors could be regarded as positive to any relationship and your well-being. If you make a choice to stay in the relationship, that will affect your well-being. If you choose to go out of that relationship, that will also affect your well-being. And then you will have the freedom to do everything. Now we go to the second one. Remember the mark allocation. Consider the learner's opinion as it is stated here, that we need to consider their opinion. 1.4.2, goal setting. We did goal setting, that was the first topic of this year. Before going into a relationship, anybody has goals. This is what I want, this is what I don't want. This is what I want to achieve, this is not what I want to achieve. Now, how will that be a positive influence or positive factor into your relationship and your well-being? Before going into a relationship, it's important to have a goal as to where you want to end up. That is a mark for that. Do not be pressured into a relationship that does not line up with your vision. Each and every person have their goals. Now, your goals, how will they affect the relationship and your well-being? Keeping your goals in mind will give you the confidence you need to look after your well-being. The goals that we are having will affect our well-being. If you go into a relationship without you being or having goals, it means you'll end up not being well in that relationship. So they will affect that. But now, when we take this positively, we say, when we have choices of which, remember, it's 3 marks each. The choices that you're going to have, how are they going to affect or be positive in the relationship? Hence, we say, every learner that have answered this question should justify their responses. If the learners has justified their responses, it means that you need to look at that and then mark the learners accordingly. Learners should not forfeit marks because you are not reading or analyzing their responses. Now the whole question weighs up to 23 marks. Remember, if the learners got this 23, applaud the learners. But the problem is that some learners will be getting lesser marks. Please do a paper trail and help that learner to at least do the question again. Now, going to the source 2, which is question 2. Now, what I did to the question paper when I go to this question is that I checked the questions here and then I stated the topic. Misstating the topic, it becomes easier. I know these questions that are here will be from what? Democracy and human rights. I think it will be best if our learners do the same. Remember, as a teacher, now because you are going to mark, it is of utmost importance for you to go and read the extract first before you can attempt to answer. I am not going to read the extract, but I hope teachers will read the extract at home when they mark. Thank you. Now, define the term public participation and mention 3 ways in which the Soweto protesters harmed their community in their attempt to be public participant. Let us look at the heading. It says, protest over power cuts disrupt morning traffic in Soweto. Now, the mark allocation, it says 1 plus 3 is equals to 4. 2 things are going to happen here. The learners are going to define public participation. After defining public participation, with this public participation question, the 1 mark will be catered for on the mark allocation. The 1 mark will be allocated for. Let us deal with that one. We'll go to the next one after. What is public participation? Remember, our learners have to be aware that when we define, we give a clear meaning of what the concept is. Public participation is taking action to be part of governing the country, exercising your right, take an active role in society and the way it is governed. Taking action to be a part of the governing of our country and also exercising our right. After they explain that, you give a learner a mark accordingly. Now, we are done with this 1 mark of defining. Now we go to the second one. The second part of the question says, mention 3 ways in which the Soweto protesters harmed their community. How are we going to know how they harmed their community? We're going to know they harmed the community by looking at the extract and then answering from the extract. They have tarnished the image of the community, made it seem violent. Why are we saying that? We go again into the extract and then check if whether the learners, what are they writing? Are they writing from exactly the extract, or they're thinking what they want to think? Now you'd see that from the extract you'd find what happened to the Soweto protesters. They have tarnished the name of the or the image of the community. You give a learner a mark. Sometimes the learner won't put the answers exactly as they are on the marking guideline, but you listen to the learner's responses, you mark it according. If the learner's responses are similar to this one but not exactly the same, you make a point that when you make a mark, you make sure that you relate them to one of the bullets that are here, so that when the HOD moderates the question, they will see that the script of the learners, they will see that at least you have shown that this answer is the same as the learner's answer. The second one, they have damaged property of those community members who had nothing to do with the electricity card. What is it that happened? Now, if they have you are not going to have this or know this if you have not read the extract. Make sure that we read the extract, colleagues. And the learners also, they should make sure that they read the extract carefully. The third one, remember now, we are going to have 3 marks. When the learners mention, they just mention what have happened. You allocate them a mark according to their way of mentioning. Remember, this question is different from the others. 3, we are mentioning. We are not, the learners are not going to justify what they have mentioned. The third one, they have made it difficult for community members to get to and from work or school due to traffic. Now, remember we've read the 3 responses, and from that 3 responses, you should get the answers. That if the learners did not answer like that one, you check if whether there is another one that is similar. And then, luckily from the memo, we have many responses that we can relate to. They have made it unsafe for children. The burning tires would also pollute the air in the community. The burning tires could also be potential fire risk. Remember, if all these responses, they are from the extract. They are from the extract. That is why it was very, very important that the learners read the extract. Now, they've been burning tires. Now, our answers would see that they are from the extract itself. I hope that is clear, colleagues. It is 1 mark is for public participation, the definition of public participation. Then the second one is for what, mentioning the 3 ways that the protesters harmed their community, because from their extract you would see that what has really transpired. Going to the second question. When we go to the second 2.2, provide 2 reasons why public participation is important for people experiencing a loss of public service. Now, going to 2.2, provide 2 reasons. When we provide 2 reasons, remember, we look at the mark allocation all the time. Does our mark allocation requires us to motivate or just to give or mention? Provide 2 reasons. Now we are only going to give reasons, but we are not justifying it because it's 2 multiplied by 1, which is still 2. To ensure that those in power cannot abuse their power by taking away basic services unnecessarily or unjustly. Remember, we've said public participation is what? When you mark the learners should also see that some of the questions are a bit related. Public participation, we said we want to be part of the governing of the country or take an active role. Now the question says to us, provide reason why that public participation is important in experiencing the lack of basic services. Now the second one would be public participant can bring unintentional lack of basic services to the attention of the authorities. If they keep quiet, the authorities won't know that there is this misuse of property or funds in their governance. It can force the authorities or government to take action. Now we have talked about the importance of what? The public participation. Award a learner a mark for each and every response that the learner got right. There will be some times where learners do not answer exactly what we want, but please make sure that the responses are similar or guide your learners into making sure they know how to analyze the questions. Describe 2 realistic demands protesters could bring forward in their peaceful protest so that they do not face the same situation in future. Now you analyze, okay, what is it that we can do to make sure that the very same protest is not as it is, Electricity should not be cut. Remember, we don't want to protest anymore. But the demands that the protester could bring forward in their protest so that they do not face the same situation in the future. Which situation? The situation of them burning tires, the situation of them protesting and making sure that being arrogant when they protest, being unapologetic and then intimidating. Now, we are saying we need 2 realistic demands. From the extract, we've seen what was the problem. Now we would say the first one, because from the extract we have read that the power cuts disrupt morning traffic. If they disrupt morning traffic, it means accidents are possible to happen. Now, when we go to the municipality, when we go to the government, what are we going to say? As our demand, electricity should not be cut without prior written notice of a certain time period so that community members have time to plan. I am looking at something because of there are 2 ticks or the 2 right on this answer. We go back to what again? The mark allocation. The mark allocation. Now, this mark allocation is different from this one. This one says 2 multiplied by 1, of which equals to 2. But this one is 2 multiplied by 2. It means the learner has to give a fact and then the supporting motivation for that fact. Now, if the community really put their realistic demands, electricity should not be cut without prior written notice of a certain time period. That what do they want? They would say so that community members have time to plan. Now this is realistic. We don't want the municipality to just cut the power without informing us. They need to inform us prior so that it is easy for us to plan for anything that might happen. The second one, adequate electricity lines should be created so that residents don't have to create their own illegal lines, which can be dangerous and hazardous. Now, if, remember there was on the extract, if you want to avoid being disconnected, come forward. Even if you have rigged your meter, you can come forward, collect your fine, and find a way forward to start paying. Do not wait to get caught. Now that was Renee Lusimenya was saying, but now we want the realistic demands now. We are saying adequate electricity line should be created. Yes, people have done what they did, but now we want enough lines to be created. If these lines are created, this is what is going to happen. The residents don't have to create their own illegal lines. Remember, they've talked about the fine. So fine only comes when there is an illegal lines or illegal happenings with regards to electricity. ESCOM could consider subsidizing the electricity of those who are unable to pay for themselves. We are dealing with what? Realistic demands. Dealing with realistic demands, it means now want ESCOM not to punish us only, but they should also subsidize those who are unable to pay for themselves. Because those that are unable to pay for themselves, they end up doing what? They're making illegal lines. Protesters can demand that ESCOM have a definite plan in place to reduce the interruption of power. For instance, load shedding. They have a responsibility towards all citizens to supply power without penalizing communities who are trying their best under difficult circumstances. Now, going back to the mark allocation, the learner might not have 4 different responses. The learner should have 2 responses. With those 2 responses, they need to motivate their answer. I hope that is clear. You get a tick for the 2 responses and the 2 motivations. Luckily, the memo had given us 4. The marking guidelines have 4 responses. Going to the next question, 2.4. Explain 2 ways in which the Soweto protesters violated the human rights of community members through their strike action. They violated the rights to safety. How did they? Remember, we go back to what? The mark allocation. We go back to the mark allocation. The mark allocation stated clearly that it's 2 multiplied by 2. This answer is the same as this one. Now, the 2 ways, the responses of the learner has to have 2 ways. From those 2 ways, it means now the learners are going to come up with 2 ways that the protesters have violated the human rights. Now, if they say they have violated this, they give us the response. But they need to motivate what they are saying with what? From the extract. They violated the right to safety. How did they violate the right to safety? That's how our learners should answer. They violated the right to safety. How did they violate it? By burning tires and throwing stones, which could injure or kill unsuspecting community members. Now, when the learner have done that, you give the learners 2 full marks. Remember, the first one, they need to tell us how the rights were violated. The second answer is they violated the right to freedom of movement. Yes, I agree. How did they violate the right to freedom of movement? As community members may have been unable to leave the area due to chaos and traffic. That's how learners should motivate. Remember, you give learners a mark for the rights that have been violating, and then the right for the motivation for that right. The right to a safe and a healthy environment was violated. How was that right to has been violated? By using toxic fumes from burning rubber tires would have been unavoided. The right to what that we are talking about here? The right to safe and healthy environment was violated. The learners had to tell us how was violated how, as toxic fumes from burning rubber tires would have been unavoidable. Now, with this question, it's 4 marks. Please make sure that the learner's responses are awarded to full 4 marks. If the learners did not answer according, or rather relevantly to what the memo is saying, it means the learner cannot get that right. 2.5. When we go to 2.5, suggest 3 alternative methods on how you could voice your opinion instead of resorting to violence. Again, we check what? The mark allocation. Now it's going to be 3 responses multiplied by 2, of which it has to amount to 6. You could hold a peaceful march. Remember, we want to voice out our opinion. We can hold a peaceful march. This peaceful march, how is it going to help us? Or what are we going to do? To air our grievances, bring the problem to the attention of authorities. You could contact a mediatory party to help consult with authorities and create a solution that works for everyone. Now, if you looked at the mark allocation as 3 multiple, it means we want 3 full responses with the motivations, then the learners can be awarded 6 marks. The last one is you could create a sign and sign a petition. Remember when we did democracy and human rights, this is very important. It means they are coming up with the solutions already to the problem, or there are better methods rather than resorting to violence. When we sign a petition, we don't need so many thousands of people. Only few people can sign a petition. What is this petition going to do? This petition is going to state the demands of the school. Now, of the municipality. Now, if they create this petition, it means the learners could get a mark for their responses and the supporting. It's very much important for us to teach our learners. If it says suggest 3 alternatives, yes, you suggest 3, but with that alternatives, look at the mark allocation, and then with what you have stated, you come up with the motivations to that. I hope we are still okay. We are not done as yet with question 2. Now, going to the 4th response. You could contact the media to publish your side of the story. Now, we don't want to make a protest, but there are solutions to that. Other solution could be contacting the media. How is this media going to help us? That is the question you ask after you provide effect to your question. In order for them to bring light, remember, people that make protests, they make protests because they think they are not being heard enough. Now, by contacting media, that will make everybody to see what is the problem and then attend to the problem. You can also, because now we are using technology more often, we can also turn to social media by creating a page or post stating the details of the issue or the problem. This will ensure that a larger audience are made aware of the problem or the issues, and public support can be created instantly. These are the responses that we believe learners can come up with, but if the learners did not come with the very same responses, check the responses and the relevancy of the responses to what the question have said. Please refrain from giving learners double ticks, because you see that if the learner has wrote that peaceful march, we are not going to mark like this. We are not going to make a double tick. This is a no. We mark and then we look at the grievances. We look at to air their grievances, bring the problem to the attention of authorities. By looking at this, that normally, colleagues, what we need to teach our learners is that when they have given us the alternatives to any question, whenever it says it is multiplied, it means the learners have to motivate their answers, like we do in grade 12. Now we are going to the third source, which is the source 3. Define the term national benchmark test and mention 2 reasons why it is important in the university application process. The question is still the same as the one that we did previously. How is it the same? I will always go to the mark allocation. When we look at the mark allocation, we are expecting 1 and 2 responses. 1, let's analyze the question. What is exactly that worth this 1 mark? Define the term national benchmark test. This is the 1 mark that we're going to get. After we define this, we're going to mention 2 reasons why it is important in the university application process. But let us start with the first one. NBT. It is a set of tests used to assess a learner's academic readiness for university. Those are tests used to assess the academic readiness of the learner to university. Then you award a mark. Some learners will be saying those are tests to assess if learners are ready for university. Not every learner will be writing like this. But because it's a source, they have researched on that source. Now they are having their notes. It will be better for you to teach your learners that when they answer, they should answer according to their understanding of the question and how they will understand the response. Now we go to the second one. When we go to this one, we check what is the question. Mention 2 reasons why it is important for that application process of the university. Now, we are not going to motivate here. We only need 2 responses that will give us 3. They decide if a learner's university application is successful or not. They will see whether or not they are academically ready for the university standard. They can use the results of the NBTs to determine the extra help needed for those learners in university. Now, remember, the learners, the marking guideline have various responses, but you're only going to take 2. It has to be clear why it is important. Going to the next. I hope that one is clear. We give learners the marks out of 3. The academic readiness of university, which is the NBT, and why this NBT is important. I hope we taught them well in this regard. 3.2. 3.2 says, provide 3 steps learners must follow before they can write their NBT. I will always go back to the mark allocation. Learners need not motivate because it's 3 multiplied by 1. So they need to provide 3 steps. They must find out what set of tests they must write for their chosen course. They must register to write the test. They must select a venue. They can go through practice question. Remember, we're providing what? 3 steps learners must follow before before, this is very important, before they can write their NBT. It means they must find out what set of tests they must write for their chosen course. Each and every learner, when they apply to university, they might be called for the NBT, looking at their results. They must register to write the test. You are not just going to write the test, but now the steps that you need to follow. The first one, find the set of tests that you're going to write, register to write the test, select the venue of the university where you want to do this, and then you can go through practice question on the website. It means you already have this sets of questions that you know. Now you are going to practice. You cannot go to write the NBT without you practicing the questions or previous question papers. I hope it's still well, colleagues. Now, going to the next question. When we go to the next question, it says describe the 2 types of tests written in the NBTs. 2 types of tests. Then when you describe these 2 types of tests, we go where? To the mark allocation. It is important for us to always go or refer to the mark allocation. The reason being so that we don't overmark learners or we don't give learners correct marks on their responses. The first one, the first test that is written as NBT is AQL. What is AQL? Academic and Quantitative Literacy. Academic and Quantitative Literacy is a multiple choice test and is made up of academic literacy test and quantitative literacy test. So when we explain or when the learners describe this, it is of utmost importance that it is equals to the mark allocations provided. Now, the second one is MAT. What is MAT? It's where they're going to check the mathematics of learners. It is written only by those whose chosen courses have a mathematics component. It means not all learners will be writing these, but only those learners that will be on their course, there will be mathematics component. Now, when you mark the learners, this one is easy. You just mark because they have explained both the types of tests that will be written. The fourth question, 3.4, discuss 2 reasons why grade 12 learners should write their NBTs as early as possible. Why it is important? Remember, going back to AQL and MAT, it shows us exactly what is needed by these tests. Why are we writing this test? Now, the question says, why is it important for us to write these tests as early as possible? Learners has to find from their sources why it is important for us to write NBTs as early as possible. Again, we still go to what? The mark allocation. I hope you are getting it, colleagues. Now, when we answer that, is to enable them to have enough time to rewrite. If the first test did not go well, so that you can rewrite, should they not get their desired results, in case their course allows to rewrite. If they did not get the desired result, they will be given a chance to rewrite. It means now to enable learners to have enough time to rewrite should they not get desired results. I hope you see what we see here on the memo, that is, should they not get. It means it's repetition. We can cancel I hope you see these ones, colleagues. We cancel this part. Should they not get desired result? Not, they not. I hope you saw that mistake, colleagues. We apologize for that. Get their desired results. Remember, the question wanted 2 responses. Now we are done with the first response. We are going to the second response. The second response is that so that they have a chance to rebook in time. Remember, you have to book in time for application deadline. Should they be unable to make their first date due to an emergency, to avoid being unable to write at their desired venue, as it might be fully booked, so that they can get it out of the way, thereby allowing them more time to focus on their National Senior Certificate exam. Writing early will help them avoid finding themselves in a situation where they are only a few dates left and they can't make any of them due to previous commitments. Now, there is something that I realizing. I don't know if you grade 11 educators are realizing the same. From the first question to the last question, I would say, it's like the first answer, it's linked to the second is linked to the third is linked to the fourth is linked to the fifth. So it means our learners have to get these marks because they are most similar and they are very relevant to each other. I am saying this because if you look at this question that wants the possible reasons, why NBT should be written as early as it's to enable them to have enough time to rewrite. Now, we were at this question where it says, what is it that they can do? They must register, they must select a venue, and they must go through practice. Now, it says why it is important. The other answers could be from this, if our learners have seen that correctly. Now, the last question, which is 3.5, looking at the mark allocation again, 3 multiplied by 2, which is equals to 6. Recommend 3 ways in which learners could mentally prepare themselves the night before they write their NBT. The night before. Remember NBT, which NBT are you going to write? You're going to write it's either the academic and quantitative literacy or mathematical test. Before writing those, what I normally say to the learners when they analyze the question, put sense into the question. Recommend 3 ways in which learners could mentally prepare themselves the night before they write their, instead of saying exactly NBT, you say MAT, which is mathematics, or AQL. Now, you are making sure that you put the ones that are relevant to you. If you say NBTs, AQL, now we are making NBT, yes, we know, going to write NBT, but now we substitute with this so that the learners could be easy on writing that answer. They can complete the practice question the night before. You're going to write mathematical test or academic quantitative literacy. You are going to practice questions the night before so as they know what to expect. You're just refreshing. You have practiced the questions, now you practice them a night before again. They can brush up on the content that they feel might be tested, so as they have as much knowledge to draw from as possible. They can separate themselves from distractions the night before so that they are rested mentally for the exam the next day. Remember, we also did the exam writing skills. The very same exam writing skills we're going to apply them when we go and write NBT. They can do something they enjoy or find coming if they feel nervous. This will help them take their mind from their stress. This could help the learners. You look at the responses. Remember, we are still very considerate of the mark allocation. It means it's going to be 3 responses. It's going to be 3 responses. With the 3 responses, the fact, it's a mark. Each and every fact, it's a mark. But when they multiply, or when it says 3 multiplied by 2. When we multiply, it means it's a fact this side. Now you motivate your fact, or you qualify your fact. By doing that, it means the learners would have answered the questions correctly according to the criteria they are supposed to. But I think this one, the teachers have taught the learners well on that matter. Now, you mark accordingly. Remember, teachers, that sometimes the learners might not write exactly. I will emphasize on that one a lot, what the marking guidelines have stated. But you look at the marking guideline, you look at the learners' answers. Do not award learners marks if they are too general when they answer questions. I hope that is clear, colleagues. Going to the next question, which is source 4. When we go to source 4, it is talking about, before I go there, it's source 4, it's question 4. Now it means we are going to, the learners have researched on that, and then now we're going to look at the questions first before we go to the marking guideline. Read the extract below and answer the questions that follow. Women power at engine prepares to pay it forward. It means, as a teacher also, you are going to read the extract. After reading the extract, the learners also have to read the extract, because they were supposed to go and research. It becomes easier if we read the extract, then when we go and mark, it becomes easier for us. This extract has been taken from 20 February 2021. Now, what are the questions? It says, define the term bursary. Still emphasizing on this. It means define the term bursary. When we define the term bursary, it means our first 4.1, it's from define to here. The bursary. What is a bursary? A bursary is an amount of money that you are given to help pay for your studies at a higher education institution. It has to be clear for you learners to be awarded that 1 mark. Now, after we are done with this, the definition of bursary, we are going to the 3 criterions learners should meet to acquire a bursary. It means learners have researched on the bursary. Now the question wants them to give exactly the criteria that can be used for them to acquire a bursary. And it's 3. It means 3 responses are needed from the learners. What are those responses? High academic achievement, good all-round achiever, well-rounded, good sports performance, musical ability, community service experience, proof of good morals, trustworthiness, good reference. Learners can state more of these, but please make sure that they are relevant. You award a mark for only 3. Sometimes learners would be repeating the answers. Please make sure that you don't award the same answers twice, but different wording. It means learners will be getting 4 marks. Going to 4.2. 4.2 says, provide 2 reasons why a bursary would be beneficial once you have finished studying. Provide 2 reasons. When we provide 2 reasons, we check. This is important, colleagues. Learners, this is very, very important. Because now it says 2 multiplied by 1. We just provide. We are not going to motivate because it's only multiplied with 1. You could get work at the company that supplied your bursary. You don't have to pay back a study loan afterwards. It looks good on your CV. It gives content to add to your CV. By providing those, you award a learner a mark. It also shows consistent hard work to employers. It helps create connections you can use in the working world. Fellow bursary holders. 1 mark will be awarded for all the 3 responses. 4.4, not 3 responses, 2 responses. Apologies for that. Here we only need 2 responses. 4.3. Describe 2 alternative options for financial assistance Vuile could have applied for to pay for her education. Now, remember Vuile is the name mentioned on the extract. Vuile was offered a bursary after matriculated. Now, other options that Vuile could have found with financial assistance, it's what? We look at the mark allocation. It means 2 alternatives could be supplied, and then describing those 2 alternatives. A study loan, it's the first alternative or the first response. Now with the study loan, is money lent to you by a bank so that you can study. Now, this way it means you have stated those alternatives and you have described, as the question has said, describe 2 alternative options for financial assistance that Vuile could have used or applied for. The second one, a scholarship. Remember it said we should describe. Some learners have the tendency of only writing a study loan or a scholarship or a learnership. That is, only 1 mark would be awarded for that. A scholarship is money that a company, business, or an organization awards to you because you did well at school, in your studies, or at sports. Our learners, by doing this, it means they are doing what? They are making sure that they are describing, as the question have said. You are not going to award full 4 marks if a learner have stated only. They have to describe. The last one, a learnership, is a job that pays you while you are studying. Sometimes you will not earn a full salary, but you get an allowance. A response for that, it deserves a mark. And how they describe that. Learners should be awarded the whole 4 marks. Only 2 responses will be taken from these. Do not find yourself awarding learners a mark when they said study loan, scholarship, learnership, and then others. Then you give learners 4 marks. No, they should describe exactly so that they get awarded 4 marks. The next question, I hope we are still okay, learners and colleagues. Discuss 3 ways that acquiring a university degree could empower young South African women. The question is very clear. We look at the mark allocation. I said earlier on that our learners should know how to analyze the question. We discussed 3 ways that acquiring university degree could empower. It is clear now. Young South African women. It means our answers are going to be based on young South African women when they get this university degree. It makes them more competitive in the workplace. When we discuss, we have given a fact. It means it will be three responses. With the three responses, now with those responses we have to discuss them. Now we're going to discuss them. When we discuss them, it makes them more competitive in the workplace. It means it's a response. Now with this, we motivate it by discussing, which is often dominated by men. Remember the question said, how are they going to be empowered? This is very much clear. A tick for the response and another tick for discussing the response. They have the ability to be the main breadwinner in the house, so they don't have to rely on anyone else. Remember, we are all about empowering young South African women. The third response, we only need three responses. They will be seen as successful in the eyes of society, which will, I love this one, they will be seen as successful in the eyes of the society. This is a response, this is a fact, this is what is going to empower young women. After being empowered by this, which will increase their self-esteem and self-worth, very relevant answer. It means now we are discussing why we're saying they're going to be successful in the eyes of the society. Women know they are more than just a wife or mother. This is empowering young South African women. After they get what? They acquire a university degree. They would know that they are more than just a wife or a mother. And now, after they know that they are not going to be just a wife or mother, they are now going to have a degree which says they are capable of working hard to achieve what they want. Very clear and relevant responses. In the process of them acquiring this degree, they are not isolated and instead are exposed to new opportunities, possible connections or career advances. Looking at this question, we've given three responses, and with those three responses, we discussed them by motivating what the responses have said. 1 mark for the three responses, 1 mark for each and every discussion or the motivation that the learner have made. I hope that is clear. We're going to, I hope I'm not rushing a lot. Suggest 2 practical action learners could take to improve their chances of receiving a bursary for tertiary education. This one, learners, remember we are still talking about this mark allocation. It says they could apply themselves in class, make sure they plan their study effectively so that they can get the exam marks they need to obtain a bursary. This question, I hope our learners was very much aware of the responses here. Criterions learners should meet to acquire a bursary. Here are the criterion. So now our question states now, suggest 2 practical action learners take. It means learners are aware what is needed when they want to get a bursary. Now this action will also be from the responses we got on 4.1. Hence I said most of these questions they are linked together. They could apply themselves in class, make sure they plan their study time effectively. So that they can get exam marks, they need to obtain a bursary. It means they need to be outstandingly well in class and making sure that they study hard. Some learners will be writing that learners could study hard in class or listen in class so that they could get high marks. Remember, we should be considerate of their English in this regard. They could get involved in sports as the 4.1 stated that there is also a bursary for sports. They could get involved in sports or cultural activities and train really hard. By training really hard, it means that could make our learners get what? They could get the bursary. The third one, join societies that help the needy or get involved in community services so that the company can see you are caring and deserving of the bursary. This is very clear from 4.1. Make sure you get involved in all aspects of your school's life and always try your best in these areas. There are learners that are not good in content, but they are good in practicals. So this is their way of getting a bursary. This will ensure that the company knows you are well-rounded and have a wide range of interest. Make sure you develop good and healthy relationship with your teachers, coaches, and leaders so that they can write good references about your work ethic. Remember that when they go to university, the references are needed from school, the testimonials. Now we have looked at the mark allocation. With that mark allocation, it means we only need two responses with the practical actions so that we get full 4 marks. Award learners when they have written well responses, because sometimes our learners are lazy to write. But if you see that there is somewhere that you can correct them, please correct them so that they know that next time they give well explained responses. The last one, not necessarily the last question, but the last response. You can do skills-based training, job shadowing, like take a girl child to work experience so that they can see that you are serious about your career interest, obtaining certain skills. Remember, colleagues, not all learners will be giving us the very same responses as these ones, but check the responses of the learners, making sure that they came up with the practical. Whenever if the responses of the learners are practical, that what matters. Practical to what they're receiving a bursary. If their responses are practical to them receiving a bursary, award a learner a mark for that. But be considerate of the mark allocations provided. The last source. This last source, it's very, very important. Source 5, question 5, identify the organization that has the only mandate according to Schools Act to represent learners in South Africa. A representative council of learners. It was also called previously, you will correct your learners if they have shown this one that was saying learners a representative learner representative council. You can award learners a mark, but then at the same time show them it's now a representative council of learners. But previously it was learners representative council, but now it's RCL. Award a learner for that mark. This is the only mark that learners should not explain anything to you, should not make an essay on that question. It's only one mark and it's only one response that is needed. The second one, 5.2, state 4 functions and principles of this council. Which council? The Representative Council of Learners, or the LRC. The first one is to build unity amongst learners. Address needs of learners. Some would say address learners' needs. You just check. Keep learners informed about events at school and community. Encourage good relationships between learners, educators, and the community. Encourage good relationship between the parents of learners and educators. Establish faithful links with representatives. Going back to the mark allocation, it means we only need 4 responses. We don't need learners to discuss. Hence, the mark allocation is going to be 4. 4 responses, that equals to 4. Learners are not going to discuss or define anything. They just state the functions of RCL. I hope it's clear, colleagues. The last question, explain how you can become a member of this council. It means the process that needs to be taken for one to become a member of which council? RCL. Mark allocation. We only need 1 response that is well explained. Hence it say 1 multiplied by 2. It means only 1 response is needed, but it should be what? Explained. You can stand for election. When you stand for the election, you are going to show your fellow learners that you are willing to serve them. You holding meetings, marketing yourself, so as to make learners aware of your potential ability to stand for the RCL election. Remember, to stand for RCL election, to do what? To build unity, to address learners' needs, encourage good relationship between parents, learners, and educators. The last one, you can be nominated by your peers. If you are not the one that is doing that, your peers can nominate you because of the abilities they see in you. This way, fellow students can have a say in who they would like to have as a representative. The whole question, it's out of 7. Now we're going back to it says the source-based task is going to be out of 90. Now let us see. Question 1, it is out of 23. Question 2, it is out of 20. Question 3, it is out of 20. Question 4, it is out of question 4, it is out of 20 also. It is also out of 20. Then the last question is only out of 7. Now that concludes us to 90. Remember, colleagues, learners have researched for the task. They went home, they researched for the task, and then now it is up to us to make sure that we mark them accordingly. What we normally say is that if a learner obtained lesser marks, it is the teacher's responsibility to make sure that the learners get maximum marks by doing what? Making sure that the learners rewrite their task, but not the whole task. What we did in some schools is that if the learners have failed or they did not obtain well in source 1, which is question 1, we make sure that the learner only rewrite question 1. But if they did not do well in question 2, they only rewrite question 2. Thank you very much, colleagues. I hope you have marked your learners well, or you're going to mark your learners well. Thank you very much.